Winter is coming.
Might just be the cold.
Winter is coming.
It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming for him.
It's either me or this cold, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
And winter is coming!
You look cold, boys.
Tis a bit nippy.
Winter is coming. Winter is coming.
That's cold. Winter is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cold.
It's cold and it's wet.
Winter is coming.
You're crying because you're cold?
You're a long way from home. And winter is coming.
I imagine you might be rather cold.
And winter is coming.
No, that's all right, I'm fine.
You're not. You're freezing.
And winter is here. Well, not even metaphorically. I mean, he's here. He's in the house. He's in the green room. But before we bring Russ onto the show, and we have plenty to talk about, I do have to give a nod to my sponsor, which is True Hemp Science. And if you haven't been to their website, I highly recommend it because you will find a panoply of CBD products that are great for your body and your mind and your spirit. And Chris over at True Hemp Science oversees everything from the most organically sourced hemp that he can find from various places, all the way through the production process and then sending those products right out to you. It is truly a Main Street operation. So by supporting Chris, you're also supporting this show and to keep the lights on here and to bring guests like Russ on. All you got to do is go there, spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, 15MINS, and you will receive a goodie bag for your order or with your order. $150 or more gets you free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. Lastly, if you have any questions about any of the products, you can go onto the website, make an appointment with Chris, and he'll talk you through your purchase or just your questions in general. All right, TrueHempScience.com. And with that out of the way, let's bring the man on himself, Mr. Russ Winter. How you doing, Russ?
How's everybody doing?
People are eagerly awaiting your appearance. You have a lot of fans on this show.
Well, good to hear.
Yeah.
It's nice to be liked by somebody out there.
It feels good to be wanted, doesn't it, Russ?
Yeah.
So any new development?
I keep an eye on that chat. I keep a close eye on that chat there's some ne'er-do-wells there that are unloading on me once in a while. I'm keeping an eye on you.
Don't worry, Russ. I've got you.
I have my agents. I'm like Trotsky. We're going to talk about Trotsky. I've got my agents out there.
Maya Rose is down there in Mexico. Maya, I should just ask you straight up, since you're in the chat today, how do you feel about your new El Presidente, Maya? Are you happy? Are you enthusiastic? Are you cynical?
Does it seem strange to you? Strange?
So maybe we'll wait for Maya to type in a little bit of a response there, but she is boots on the ground. Jill Wong, who shows up in chat, is also living in Mexico. So who knows? We may get some perspective. So
Todos
anyway.
aparece extraño para ti.
Wow, Russ, that's pretty impressive.
Does it all seem strange to you in Mexico?
Where'd you pick that up?
No, that's actually more Portuguese. I actually speak pretty good Portuguese, but it's close enough to Spanish that I think the Mexicans can understand what I said. I don't know. Maybe not.
Oh, Maya made a comment above. Let's check out Maya's comment. Let's see what she has here. Let's see. Just scroll back through. You got to go all the way back. All the way back. Let's see. People I thought of being different at the lowest level of memes here with their other. Oh, here it is. Okay. It has been sad to watch the brainwashed crowd of so-called alternative people fighting, promoting their choice of election, mostly for Claudia. That includes the ayahuasca facilitators of all kind. You ever do ayahuasca, Russ?
No, what is that? That's mushrooms or something?
Yeah, it's this vine that produces a psychedelic effect, and people go to South America. But they do it here now. They do it all over the world.
Well, you know, I had the mushroom experience in Oaxaca up at the Benito Juarez Nature Preserve. I told you that story online.
Yeah, that was a cool story, man. That was
I know about the magic mushrooms in Mexico. I experienced them firsthand by accident. But I'm glad I did. I mean, it's sort of like a memorable experience in life.
Right. Yep. And sometimes for some people, all they need is like that one little journey, right? That changes something fundamental. You know, we'll get into Claudia Sheinbaum here in a minute, but Sheinbaum. I always work her Sheinbaum. So they did this really interesting story or study rather, and it was about people who took LSD. And they had a personality profile before they took LSD. And then they had a personality profile after they took LSD. And everything was the same except for one area of the personality profile. And that was based on values and choices. And afterwards, they all began to either question their role in sort of the machinery of society, or they were wanting to have kind of more stop and smell the roses moments in their lives, right? So everything else was completely the same except for this one area of values and choices. So after you did that, did you feel like your values and choices shifted?
Well, they were kind of shifting already anyway, because what happened, I went down there with my son, and I had just sold my apartment buildings in Tacoma, very successful transaction. So it kind of made me financially at that point. Yeah. And so I had to kind of go a different direction, but I'm not entirely sure that it was the best direction. You know, I became kind of lazier after that because I didn't really have any purpose in life. Didn't really have any work, to get up in the morning, and I had a lot of responsibility. It was tough work. And I just wanted to kick back all the time. And in some ways, I've never really been able to get off of that.
Well, okay. So it did impact your values and choices in some ways. Also dovetailing with a retirement phase, sort of, right? Do you think that somehow it led you also in this direction?
Ultimately, yes. And plus I did a lot of traveling. And it did open up the world for me because I was kind of closed in this one world. And I think I became a little bit more universal and appreciated different areas of the globe and the world, became more of a world traveler.
Yeah.
I kind of fashioned myself at the time as being kind of an Anthony Bourdain. I used to watch Anthony Bourdain and kind of associate with him. That's kind of how I saw it myself. And I wasn't. I can
totally relate to that. I can totally relate to that. Yeah. So let's start the show's conversation off with Claudia Sheinbaum, because you've been doing a lot of digging, and I'm going to go over to Twitter and I'm going to get into our.
Well, I don't know a lot about her, but I just find it very, very strange that you got this tiny little Jewish population in Mexico, hardly even exists. A lot of them came with Trotsky in the 30s.
That's right.
A a lot of them are kind of part of the old, Spanish crowd that came over and, dealt in slaves but they never really got established in Mexico. So I don't really quite understand the history of this. How she's definitely a turtle on a fence post, but how the heck did she become the president of Mexico? It's just a mystery to me. And I have to, I notice, since I'm a noticer, I notice thing, I have to ask that question. And I don't think she's a good person. What do you think?
Right. No. I mean, in the description of the show, I call her the Trudeau of the South, right? Because they both have similar values. They're both pushing the same agenda, essentially. So it's like a pincer effect now. So we have Trudeau in the north, and we have Sheinbaum in the south. And no, I don't think she's a good person. Now, she may believe she's a good person, but believing they're a good person and actually being a quote unquote good person is a whole other thing.
Unless Trump gets elected, which he probably will, between now and his inauguration, you got Mayorkas and this lady just working the borders like crazy.
Oh yeah.
Just a final thrust of huge amounts of people crowding the United States, and really almost like the end game. And I don't think Trump is not only is he capable, but I don't think even if he tried, he could stop it when he got into office. He would have to kind of organize, get his people in there, overcome the problems inherent in his first term anyway, and they'll just swamp him. And I think she's got to be part of it. So that's my call on it. It's also cartel, drugs.
That to me is the most fascinating and terrifying equation with all of this, right?
Yeah, narco state.
Right. So I could be mistaken here, but I had heard that there were 37 other candidates that are dead, right, on the run up to this election. Now,
it's the political climate down there. I think a lot of those were like local candidates or mayoral type candidates. But if you're not on board the cartel, you're dead. It's a extermination campaign to get rid of anybody that might be problematic to the cartel.
Right.
And the federal government is critical. The federales are critical to fight. I mean, anybody that's watched Narco on Netflix, that's a good series to watch because you kind of really get a pretty good picture of the corruption and the lawfare and the money being changed hands and how the narcos control large swaths of the government, and the good guys tend to get killed.
Yep. True. Absolutely. I want to revisit this comment later after we go through a lot of this stuff. But Nathan says the Mexican people will ace her.
What does that mean, ace?
Well, I think that means that they'll take her out. That the Mexican people will not put up with this person. We'll see about that. And after we go through a lot of this stuff, I want to revisit that comment. But I don't. After we put some evidence on the table, let's revisit that comment. So we know that there were a number of candidates that were not allowed to run because, well, they're 6 feet under at this point. And it's clear that Obrador, her predecessor, was a socialist, right? I mean, she worked for him when he was the quote unquote, what do they call it, the governor of Mexico City. They don't call them mayors, right? And it's kind of like if you're going to become the president of Mexico, you almost have to become the governor of Mexico City,
right?
Like that's the training,
or one of the key states, but it seems to be Mexico City.
Yeah. So she was appointed by him. So she's an Obrador underling, and Obrador is a socialist, right? He's made no bones about that. But not as overtly as socialist. not as overtly as WEF, which is really what looks like she stands for, as Sheinbaum. So it's already been in the water for a while, right? But not like this, right?
Well, the thing that caught my eye was the photo. I think I sent it to you somewhere. The photo of her with Larry Fink of BlackRock.
Yeah, let's see if we can bring that up here.
Really big Jewish oligarch, big time, and a vulture and a financier. Right. And so I think they're going to probably loot Mexico. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if, even though they portray her as a sort of a socialist, I wouldn't be surprised if instead there's a bunch of privatization that takes place.
Well, she married the president of a bank, right? Like one of Mexico's major banks. And to me, that's clearly what the communists, we'll just call them communists. That's what the communists are all about. They were funded by bankers from New York to basically, kill out Nicholas and Alexandria and run the Bolshevik. That was all staged out of New York City with the New York.
Well, I think she's sort of a little bit like the guy down in Argentina, who's another Jew, Milei, but with a different cloth. She kind of cut out of a different image. I don't know. Would you consider her a populist? Did she run on kind of a populist message at all? What is her message? Maybe people from Mexico could help us with this, because
Well, her message is pretty clear. She's in the green world. That's where her training comes from, right? She was trained at UC Berkeley with connections to Lawrence Livermore Lab, and it's all about this whole idea of like ecological engineering. I think that's the phrase, right? That's her background. So she is all about the new Green Deal.
Some kind of technocrat type.
Well, if you follow this out, Mexico is a major producer of oil.
Right. Right, and also food, and I think food is going to be a big issue. Notice that the first big cases of bird flu are down in Mexico. Do you think that's down a coincidence?
In Mexico, right? Like almost to the day she gets elected. Now we've got a case of bird flu in Mexico.
So if she's a hardcore on that type of stuff, then she'll just crack the country down.
Well,
they'll start starving. A lot of the food that comes from Mexico will kind of disappear, and then they'll flood.
That's a really good point, Russ, because of the amount of produce that we do get from Mexico, and what's going on in this country in terms of weather conditions, and what, for all intents and purposes, looks like a war in food production as well. Whether they blow up a processing plant, or they cull millions of chickens because there may be some kind of bird flu, right? And now they cut off the food supply from Mexico. You bring up a really good point.
Yeah, it's weaponized, and then she'll jump on board of that and be a hardcore technocrat, bureaucrat, cracking down. They can control a lot of people. They can send off waves of more migration, swarm the borders, bring the rest of what's left of the United States down, because the United States is just basically teetering. It's a little bit off topic, but I had a few stats that I spotted today. It's kind of at the bottom of the DM that might be just worth mentioning.
Yep.
What's happened to the United States to kind of quantify it a little bit.
Yep.
But you see down there at the bottom, let's see.
I think I have it. Is this what you're talking about right here?
Yeah, there's a chart that says that Americans are quite literally being replaced in the job markets. The real fly chart. See that one?
Yeah.
Can you pop it up? Can people see it?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay, the blue line, it kind of the indexes go back to 20 15, not too many years, 10 years, this shows. The blue line are foreign-born, non-native workers in the United States. The red line.
Look at the disparity here.
Yeah, especially since COVID. And then the Native American workers has actually dropped considerably. Now, the other strange things that, they've been doing these job numbers month after month after month. And when you look into the innards of the job numbers, you'll find out that they're almost exclusively part-time jobs.
Yeah.
With large numbers of people, full-time workers. In fact, here's the numbers you've all been waiting from Zero Hedge. Native-born workers in the last report, which was this morning, which came in supposedly hot. So they're saying it's a hot number. Native-born workers down 663,000 in 1 month. Foreign-born workers, mostly illegals, up 414,000. Folks, that really gives you a clue of what's happening to the United States. They're gutting the native-born workforce. And I don't know what these foreign-born workers are doing. I'm sure some of them are hardworking, good folks, but what are they doing? Are they being hired undocumented? Is it just like total lawless hiring practices? What are these people doing? Service jobs, I guess.
I want to address that point, but before I do, I want to point out something on this graph, which is this area right here. This is when Trump is president.
Yep.
Right there. Right. Just before 2020. Right. There's your 2020. So this would be basically 2016 to 2019. Then we hit COVID. And then, of course, people are staying at home, losing their jobs. And then, we have all these other people that can perform these functions. And then it gets even worse, right? It gets even worse. Let's see. So, I'm sorry. This is flipped. Right? This is native-born. Native-born is the red.
Yeah, it kind of chops around until Biden becomes president.
This is still Trump. This is
chops
still,
around. Yeah.
Right. This is still Trump. And then we have a major dip. I think this is still the effects of Trump from here to here, right? And then afterwards, everything just literally for this culture goes south. And so one of the things that we need to point out is that when we say native born, we're not just limiting this to so-called white or Caucasian people. Right.
Absolutely.
We're talking about people born in this country, which would include non-white and Caucasian people as well.
Right.
So
including blacks.
So I live in Texas, and so I live around, second, third generation Mexican families here, and they're not into the whole immigration thing. Right? Because they know that what they have worked hard to establish over at least 2 to 3 generations being born in this country, overnight, they're replaceable. Right? So they're not happy with it either. And
it creates a slave plantation, because what it does is drives wages down throughout the labor force. And it's exploitive, very, very exploitive type stuff. You talk about communism. This is basically what the communists want to do, is just level everybody to this lowest common denominator, drive the wages down. And that's the effect of what happens when you let a bunch of non-native people on the border, undocumented mostly or illegal, and let them in the workforce. It takes away somebody's job. And I don't buy the argument that, these are jobs that nobody else wants. Maybe at one point there might have been some truth to that, but we're way past that.
Right. So I've been kind of looking into trucking, not because I want to become a trucker, although I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it's kind of a cool job. But I've been sort of going through like message boards and chats where people are talking about the trucking trade, specifically truckers themselves. And they're seeing these guys go straight from coming into the country right into trucking. Right into trucking.
Yeah, good way to distribute drugs and traffic people and all kinds of ancillary type stuff.
Yeah. So they're being phased out. And these are people who don't even really speak the language, right? So what does that mean? That means that you have to hire somebody who is, let's say they're working for, Walmart. You have to hire somebody who's working for Walmart to be able to translate for that person, right? So that means, let's say they're Somali. So now you have to have ancillary support positions so that you can lead and guide these people through, because they can't read the language or they don't understand the language itself, right? So it's not just the position, but it's the ancillary support positions where there has to be some degree of bilingual, transference of knowledge to be. So that's a whole other part of this, right? So you're also hiring the infrastructure to support those people.
Yeah, I mean, they're not part of the culture, so the culture starts really breaking down and becomes eradicated. I mean, there's a reason that there's sort of an uproar over this. It's fait accompli, and now you've got this new president of Mexico, and how are they going to deal with her? She's not going to cooperate, and Mayorkas is still in power.
Right.
And what a nasty guy that was. Mayorkas won't even give Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Secret Service protection. Can you believe that?
Yeah, sure. He's an asshole. Mayorkas is an asshole. And he's, look, let's define. Somebody could be an asshole and still have some redeeming qualities.
Right.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Exactly. But he's an asshole without any redeeming qualities.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. And then, it kind of leads us to Fauci. I don't know what we're going to cover on him, but there was some hearings that took place in Congress. Some very interesting exchanges with him.
Yeah,
where
we covered a little bit of that earlier this week, but I'm happy to, because that show doesn't have the same reach as this one does. So I'm happy to go back over that material. Well, I want to show you something first before we go there. I was on Claudia Sheinbaum's Twitter feed. I don't know if you took any time to get into her Twitter feed at all, but hopefully they haven't shut it down, because there was some very interesting information in the Twitter feed. Okay, let's see. Let me get into the election tweet. Right here. Let's see if I can find this one thing. Everything here, I'm just going to. Everything that you.
Wait a minute. Somebody just asked the question: why would Kennedy want Secret Service protection when he can afford his own security? Good point. However, the Secret Service gets privy to a lot of intelligence, and intelligence is a big part of protecting these people. And if he's cut off from that, it really makes him vulnerable.
Everybody who runs for president, if I'm not mistaken, is afforded Secret Service protection, right? Like, were they going to deny that to Elizabeth Warren? No. Or Amy Klobuchar? No. Right? They're going to get that.
But there's a certain threshold, but Robert Kennedy Jr. meets it. And he's also a very high risk of assassination.
So this is Claudia Sheinbaum's Twitter feed. And so these are people that live in Mexico. And of course, we have a political cartoon, which is the cartels, right? Georgian cartel. And he's sitting in the big chair and there's the little chair for her. So these are people, and you'll just go through this. We'll say, Ayuda del Narco, right? El Fraud. There's all this stuff in here, right? They're not happy.
All the memes kind of point to her being a fraud and sort of a corrupt, super corrupt.
Look at this, Taputo Madre, like that, right? So there's this. I hope it's still in here. There's this one. It's an illustration, and it's really fascinating. If I can find the illustration, I wish I had saved it. Essentially, here, let me see if I can find it somewhere else, since we don't waste any time here. Hold on. Okay, so I want you to check this out. Okay, so they say it's falso, but there does seem to be a correlation between The Simpsons and Claudia Sheinbaum. Now, again, I can't completely validate this, but I did see it on a number of feeds, right? So let me just show this. So there seems to be some connection here between The Simpsons and Miss Sheinbaum. But the one that was really interesting, because we know that it does exist and it is real, is I'll show you. You can see her in the world ahead for 2024. So this is before she got elected. And you can see in The Economist her profile right there. Do you see that?
Yeah.
That's her with her little ponytail.
Yep.
Right there. Right there. So this is even before she's been elected. There she is.
Yeah, The Economist, showing up in The Economist tends to be the alert. Somebody's emerging. That's been. And then
we have the whole eclipse cycle here as well, which was quite interesting for them to include that. But to me, that is such a tell, right? They knew ahead of time that this woman was going to run Mexico. There it is.
Yeah, they almost appoint him. It's just appointments. I mean, all these so-called democracies are that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to get on some of the latest of Biden. This whole trip to Normandy was unbelievable. I got
so did he really walk out like that? Because I saw another video that said that was clipped, and he actually went and sat back down in his seat.
Well, let's watch it. You can answer it yourself. I thought it was very, very peculiar. I mean, first they're kind of hinting, well, he pooped his pants, right? Well, I don't know that he did that, but I'm not entirely sure. But I have in your DM, there's a series of videos we should watch. We can get through that pretty quickly because we need to kind of assess Biden. We're getting to the point where he's not able to function, in my opinion. It's been that way for some time. You see the clips?
Yeah, I'm going through it in a second here. Hold on.
It's in my. I put them around the web, and I put them all in there. It's just a sequence of them, and around the web.
Okay. Let's see. We got Sheinbaum, a lot of Sheinbaum. Okay, hold on. There's your Fauci. There's your Putin. There's your Hezbollah corporations during Pride Month. More Putin. Trump's biggest donor. So is it in there, or is it in the other one with Giuseppe?
No, it's the second. It's in today's. Okay, it's called Joe Biden's latest in America's planned humiliation ritual from today.
Is that on your web? Is that on your website?
Yeah, news around the web. If you click that, I've got some interesting little clips that we can evaluate his. He's in Normandy. So this is a situation where they let him out of the dog kennel.
Right.
And let him kind of run around the neighborhood a little bit.
Right.
And he's with Macron and he's doing this big 80th anniversary thing of D-Day.
Right.
So it's a fairly high profile event, international event. And quite embarrassing. So if you go to the first one, it shows him standing around. It's pretty quick. He's getting out of his car. Okay, well, he just looks out of it.
Right.
He doesn't really look engaged. Are you playing it?
Yeah, I have it. Give me one sec here. I have it queued up.
It just doesn't look engaged. He's just out of it. Now, you might just kind of say, okay, well, they're waiting for instructions to go somewhere. But, look at the expression on his face.
They're always wearing purple, right? That was the color that Claudia Sheinbaum was wearing, purple.
And he makes no eye contact with any of his aides or staff. He just stands there staring off into space. Look at his hands. He's an old senile man. I got to feel sorry for him. I may be like this in a few years. I'm not really saying that. I'm just saying he shouldn't be there any more than any senile person. So
what are your thoughts on like multiple Bidens, right? Like
definitely.
Okay. So do you think that they roll out senile Joe for events like this, and then they keep actors Joe for other events? Like what do you think the mix and match is all about?
I think what this is all about is a humiliation ritual of taking the United States down and just getting people just so disgusted with everything and kind of saying, come on, this is what we're doing. We've got guys like this. So that starts the day off. He's just kind of sitting there.
Let's replay that again. I want to see it again.
You never see him, talk to his staff. He's not a very friendly guy. He's an old, senile old man. Look at him, just looking around like he's confused.
Yeah, he's like, where am I?
But it gets worse, so let's keep going. Go to the next one.
Okay. So let's do this.
Now, this is the one that's not clipped.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin III, Secretary of Defense of the United States of America.
It's just kind of out of sync. You don't. Sure, he ended up sitting in a chair. He shakes hands with Macron. There's very little engagement. Macron's wife looks at him, kind of like, who is this guy? Look at Macron. Macron's going, God, how am I supposed to handle this guy?
The Honorable.
And what's going on with Jill right there? Right? Like she knows something has happened here.
Has he pooped his pants, or what's going on here?
Did he have a giant fart? Did he shit? Right?
Yeah.
She knows something's not right. Like when she puts her hand to her mouth like that, and Macron's whatever is looking over there, and she knows something is up, right? Or whatever she is, knows something is up. And you're right. It is a complete embarrassment, humiliation ritual.
Lloyd J. Austin III, Secretary of Defense of the United
He's
States.
just not engaged. He's just, you don't. He's a senile old man. You got to feel sorry for him. But he shouldn't be there. They need to get him out. He's done.
Well,
can't have this.
Staying on the trucker theme, I don't know if you saw the video of this guy who's a trucker, and he said, "Hey, I've been all over the United States, and I have not seen one Biden-Harris sign in a yard or on the roadway anywhere I've been." So they are not campaigning at all.
No. Now he had one little meeting in Pennsylvania or someplace, another empty hall of nobody there.
So what do you think that's about?
It's almost kind of in your face. We don't have to run a campaign. We don't have to really, we can spend money. I mean, he's getting money, but so is Trump. I mean, Trump's the late Sheldon Adelson's wife gave Trump a huge donation, and Trump is just acting awful, particularly on Israel.
Well,
so it's very demoralizing to see these candidates, the way they're bought and paid for, and they're not accountable to anybody. That there's no standards being applied. So let's go ahead and we'll finish up the Biden one.
So before we go there, wasn't part of the condition for Adelson's widow for Trump to get that money, he had to promise that the United States would support the annexation of, the West Bank, right?
Yeah, that's the story. Yeah. Yeah, or he would just kind of stand down and let the process proceed.
Right, exactly.
Which is what he did in his term.
Let's see. So you want to do the walk away in the stupor?
Yeah.
Okay. So we got the beginning, the middle, and the end. And away we go.
Work? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, that's towards the end. Yeah, go back to this. Okay, there goes Jill and Joe.
So this is what they did. They did the weird sitting down thing, and they cut out the middle, and then they added this. So that was kind of a
a speech. There was a speech by Austin that Biden really didn't play any role. I don't know if Biden even said anything.
There was this video that was circulated where it was like he left the stage right after he tried to sit down. Right. So that was like a deke, but this is the ending of the event itself. Right?
Yeah, he hightails it out of there. I mean, he doesn't really hightail it. He stumbles. He's in a stupor. He's shuffling. Now contrast this with Macron. Macron's. Pause for a second.
Well,
Macron, this is a big event, and Macron knows that he's got to go work the crowd a little bit, for heaven's sake. You got all these.
He wants to display his youthful vitality in contrast.
I guess, but I mean, at least he performs his function as it should be. Go shake hands with some of these old vets. Show a little appreciation. Here he hugs this guy. And where's Biden? He's long gone, He's Mr. Superman. He's got to go take his nap.
That's all planned.
Maybe
That's all planned. I
big
think
contrast.
I think Macron wants to be Napoleon. That's why he's theoretically committing troops to go fight the Russians, which is what Napoleon did, right?
So this is his way of kind of asserting leadership over the now defunct United States, led by this defunct, has been leader that just stumbled off the stage. So Macron goes over and performs his function well.
Yes. Yeah. Macron is establishing his leadership, right? I mean, and it's again, I think he sees himself, I could be completely wrong, but I think he sees himself as a modern Napoleon. And the idea of a quote unquote world leader, right, is for your name to go down in history. So no matter what you think of Napoleon, we remember him, or Hitler, we remember him, or Stalin, we remember him. And these people are usually engaged in massive conflicts, like massive wars. And I think that's where Macron sees himself, right? Like if there is going to, and Ursula van der Leyen, who is the head of the EU, has been talking about the creation of a standing army for the EU. This has been a very big point of discussion over the past few months. And I believe Macron is positioning himself to be the head of that army, right? Like he's going to outdo England, and they've already got French weapons, and there's French troops already in Ukraine, right? So he's going to outdo England or outdo any of these other countries, so that when push comes to shove and they have their standing army, he's the guy that's standing on top of the standing army. And if not officially, then unofficially, he's making his case for that, right? Because this is, the last world war that we've had. And he's in the mix right here with all these World War II vets. And it's all very symbolic in my estimation. And it's the transference of power from the doddering, dying, old empire symbolized by Biden, to your point, a humiliation ritual, and this idea that the EU is going to be the leading force of the West moving forward. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's a good theory. But I mean, again, humiliation ritual, and this is how they project it. I mean, some people I'm looking at some of the comments here, and people are acting like, well, you guys are blue pill. What's the big deal looking at this projection, public projection of what's going on? There's a lot here. I'm sorry I can't teach you in 5 minutes of going over this stuff, what we're doing here. And it may bore you. If it is, bye-bye, go away. Come back some other time, try again, but go away. If you can't get this, if you can't understand how we're trying to analyze the projection of public persona, then I can't really help you.
Let's take that comment into consideration, right? If that was Barack Obama at that event, do you think it would have went down like that? No,
because he would have been sharp.
He would have been sharp. He would have been there. He would have been doing the exact same thing that Macron.
Polished. And whatever you say about Barack Obama, he was polished.
So if you really want to pop a pill, this is a black pill, to be honest with you, because what we're really talking about is, at least here and in this idea that there is a cultural West. The EU is not a cultural West. It is not a cultural West. It is a synthetic analog of the cultural West. They're killing the cultural West in Europe, right? They're killing the cultural West in the United States. And it all has to do with this massive amounts of forced migration. That's a big part of it. So what they're trying to do is rebrand this idea of the EU as the new cultural West, but it's completely different, based on a different set of values than anything that had preceded before it, right? So if you really want to get down to brass tacks, this is really a black pill conversation. That this is all about the destruction of the so-called West. And the EU theoretically would play a role in the new, right, a quote unquote new world order, right? They would play a leading role in the new world order. And at some point, the EU would, I don't know, maybe join forces with, other blocs or other unions. But, this is where theoretically they're steering this ship. Now, if you want to talk about Russia and the EU, the other part of this too that people don't understand is that the Germans and the Russians have had a long-standing relationship for many, many years. And in fact, Nicholas and Alexandra were Germans. So for him to actually fight against the Germans in World War I was really, cutting against the grain. He did that so that he could regain popularity amongst his sagging support in Russia, right? So the other thing too is that in this regard, France wants to jump ahead of Germany, right, as being the centralized power, or jump ahead of Germany to somehow subvert this idea that the Russians and the Germans have this connection, and they do, right? They do have it.
Well,
now,
potentially
Russia,
they do.
They want to go into Russia and basically balkanize, Russia.
Well, there's been interesting things coming out of Russia that also pertain to the Middle East as well as Europe. And that's a comment by two things. Iran has given Hezbollah their very best ground-to-air missiles. So remember we talked about this a long time ago, and I kind of made a prediction that when Israel and Hezbollah really go to blows, I mean to serious blows, that Hezbollah will be loaded with the best equipment to take down Israeli planes that there is, or American planes. Well, that's happened. The Iranians have done it. And not only that, there's a very interesting statement. If you could grab near the bottom, let's see what Putin says about supplying the Houthi with sufficient weaponry to start sinking American aircraft carriers. You see that one?
Yeah.
The threat level is really high right now. So you got Israel about ready to go after Hezbollah. You got Hezbollah's armed to the teeth. You got the stuff going on with Russia and Europe and the U.S. And then you got Putin just said, okay, we're going to give Houthis sufficient weaponry to start sinking your aircraft carriers because you're supplying Ukraine. That's what he said. There it is.
Мы думаем на тему о том, что если
it doesn't translate.
Доставлять такое оружие в зону боевых действий для нанесения.
So, but there is says Russia will supply. Can you see that or not? Here, let me do this. So it says Russia will supply its long-range weapons to regions of the world from where there will be sensitive attacks on countries supplying weapons to Ukraine. I think Yemen is on the top of the list and has the best odds to sink some aircraft carriers.
Yeah. So the mainstream media is not picking up. The mainstream media in Europe or in the U.S. not picking up on any of this stuff, and they act like Putin is some fool not to be taken seriously.
Didn't the Yemenis hit the USS Eisenhower?
Well, I think that was fake news.
Okay.
So that might have been floated out there, maybe even by the Russians, who knows, to kind of put that seed in people's minds.
Right.
Because they have intent to do that now. It's out in the open. And what's that going to be like? What's the hit on? They go into Hezbollah, they go after Hezbollah and get their asses kicked, and Israel starts continuing to swirl down the toilet because they can't restrain themselves. And then all of a sudden, an aircraft carrier gets sunk by the Houthis with these new weapons that the Russians and the Iranians are putting into their hands. So they haven't de-escalated at all. The whole 8 months of the Gaza campaign, the genocide, the countries opposed to Israel and the United States have been quite busy. They've been just sitting on their hands.
I have always had in the back of my mind, and some of this comes from Brendan O'Connell, right? And you know Brendan O'Connell, right? Anyway, Brendan O'Connell, when he was on the run, he thought, well, I'll go to Iran. And because I'm on my war path against the Zionists and worldwide Jewry, I'll find some allies in Iran. And he didn't find that to be the case at all when he was in Iran. And
well, he's not the most diplomatic guy.
Well, he's not the most diplomatic guy. I understand that, right?
Yeah.
But you would think that there would be people that would have a hardcore political spirit, right, in the way that he has, that he could relate to, and he never found that there, right? He never found, according to him, the same level of animus that he had.
But I don't think the Iranians are really going looking for trouble. I really don't. I think they're fairly restrained.
I don't think
they're not going to sit there. They're not going to sit there and let you abuse them, but they're not going to go looking for trouble. So that's what I would say to that.
And I do think, because of how the whole thing went down with the Shah of Iran and the establishment of Khomeini as a theocratic religious figurehead, that of course the United States intelligence agencies played a huge role in that, right? They destabilized Iran enough so that they could bring in Khomeini, who they were working with in France, right? They're sending all these cassettes from France, Paris, where Khomeini's in exile. And eventually they flipped the country because the Shah was becoming a bit too modern, right? He was becoming a bit too powerful in the region. And they wanted to reset the clock on Iran and take him back, about 300 or 400 years.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what the West does with these emerging regional powers, is they kind of set them back. That's what's going to go on in Mexico, by the way. Whatever progress Mexico has made.
But it's weird. That's a weird model too, right? Because they're going to set them back through this idea of modernization, right?
Yeah, the Shah wanted to kind of modernize the country, and and he wasn't a bad ruler.
The Shah was trying his best. Was he perfect? No, but he was trying his best to do things for his people.
Build Iran up to be a respectable country in the world, and so they brought in all these religious zealots to set the country back.
That's right. So in that regard, right, Iran becomes kind of a vassal state of U.S. intelligence and British intelligence, right? Nobody ever really talks about MI6. Everybody talks about the Mossad, or they talk about the CIA. Man, MI6 is like floating around there in the background. And they're engaged in a lot of this stuff as well. So they were also part of that destabilization. So they become kind of this vassal state of the intelligence agencies at that point in time. And so where are they in terms of that relationship? Are they still part of those connections with the alphabets that basically set that up? And if so, what sets that apart from the relationship with Israel, which some would say there's a vassal state connection, but going in the other direction from Israel to... So I've always thought that there are these two versions of the vassal state that are kind of in this regional conflict that to me seems very theatrical on a certain level. I don't think the Houthis are theatrical, though. I think they're very real, and they had to fight against.
They're a tool, so they can use them as a tool, as a pressure point to try to rein in the United States and Ukraine and Israel. So there's two things going on. So if let's say if you're a rational actor in Iran, this is how I kind of process it, rational actor would say, we can't be acting too crazy. We can't be making too many inflammatory statements. We can't be going around calling everybody subhuman like the Israelis do. So we'll just sit back and let them engage in their weird behavior, their weird supremacist behavior, but hope that the United States, which we're trying to maintain at least open channels with, will start to work against the Israelis to kind of restrain them. Well, that's 8 months ago, and look what's happened. And the reason is Zog control, total Zog control of the United States. And Iran can't control that. They can only hope that cooler heads prevail. But it didn't happen, did it?
No. I mean, even when they had an opportunity to retaliate, it was kind of like, well, we'll just throw a few things out there just to let you know that, we noticed. Right. I mean, that was what it was all about.
So really, the only thing they can do is make sure the Hezbollah has the very best defense weapons to take down Israeli aircraft or American aircraft, and really create a lot of casualties, and make them pay the price. What else can they do? They can't reason with them.
No.
You're dealing with mad dogs. I think it's and the same with Ukraine. They're now shelling Russian cities. That's pretty darn provocative.
That was a big piece of information that came out when the Trump verdict came down, right? So they have Trump on his felony convictions, whatever. And meanwhile, the Biden administration has given Ukraine the green light to use American weapons and strike into the heart of Russia. That all happened on that day. Not a lot of people talked about it. We were too busy talking about Trump and Alvin Bragg and all this other stuff, right? So this thing is happening.
Which is another very strange, demoralizing event that you can just drag on somewhat flimsy charges. I don't know, misdemeanor charges.
Well, they changed the laws before they charged him, right? They literally changed the laws. They did the same thing with E. Jean Carroll. They changed the laws so that E. Jean Carroll could then successfully sue Donald Trump.
When did Donald Trump pay off Stormy Daniels? Is that during the 2016 election? They paid her off and said, "Here's some money."
Yeah.
And that's basically, they're charging him because he had this sleazy Jewish lawyer that handled it all for him poorly, indicating once again Trump's very poor judgment in picking people to be around him. He's just loves to have sort of sleazy types, sleazy attorneys, sleazy Zionists. His brother.
Well, I think he likes sycophants, and if they happen to be sleazy. Like Mark Meadows is a sycophant. And Mark Meadows was clearly in charge during the last days of the Trump presidency, right? Like, what's his name? The guy from Overstock.com, the guy that originally owned it, right? Forget it. I always forget his name. Patrick, what's his name? He actually came in with a plan. Right. They came in with a plan, and they had this thing kind of set up. Right. And they managed to somehow get into the White House. And it was him and Sydney, what's her name, and a couple other people. And they managed to actually have a meeting with Trump, Patrick Byrne. And basically, they're laying all this out for Trump. And Trump looks around and says to Meadows, "Why didn't you tell me this? Right? Why didn't you, bring all these things to my attention?" And he promises them that, yes, you can do this. Sidney Powell can have an office, all these things, right? But then he says, "Well, you got to have Rudy involved."
Right.
They didn't want Rudy.
Right. So that's what Trump does. He just sabotages himself by his choices. So, well, we got to pay off this porn star that I banged, I don't know, 20 years ago, something like that. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have this Michael Cohen handle it. And Michael Cohen totally blows it and sort of gets Trump in trouble, or at least getting in enough trouble that they can now bring these late in the day charges against him that are this total lawfare. So that's what I take away from this whole thing is Trump's choice of people around him. Not so much the injustice against him is obvious.
Well, who do you think was picking Trump's cabinet the first time he was in office?
No, I don't know. Probably one of Sheldon Adelson's buddies.
Sheldon Adelson.
Right.
Those were Sheldon Adelson appointments.
So, you keep wondering why we keep swirling down the toilet and why I become so hard spoken on the Zog, because Zog leads to just really stupid, almost psychopathic behavior. Just a bunch of weird people doing weird things, So the Iranians are trying to deal with the United States, keeping reins on Israel, and then now they realize they can't do it, and that totally destabilizes the world and creates a situation where you're going to have a lot of harm, and a lot of innocent people are going to get hurt. And now you're dealing with Trump, a totally senile Biden in Normandy, and Trump and his ridiculous trial, and his attorney, Michael Cohen, handling all this stuff, and Rudy. Are they going to bring charges against Rudy?
They have. They interrupted his birthday party.
So could we get some more totally corrupt, stupid Zog types involved? And then he takes a big check from Miriam Adelson. Just every day, more and more of this stuff.
So you know that Sheldon Adelson was behind the John Bolton thing, right? That was a total Sheldon Adelson move.
Right. So he's being allowed to really sabotage Trump.
Trump hated John Bolton, hated him, and was forced to hire him, right? So this is what happens when you take money. This is what happens when you become politically.
Well, I think it's worse than that. I think Trump is headed. He's going to set up a Zog police state. That's what I've been saying.
Well, that would probably be some of his marching orders, right? Here, I do have an alternate theory. And my alternate theory is that so you have President Zombie, and then you have Trump. We have an election, and it is contested. It's already contested. Right now, it's already contested. We have an election, and it's contested, and it's held up in court, just like in 2000, right? Just like in 2000. But this time, you have all these people who are primed and pumped and pissed, PPP, and they are willing to go at it on the streets. Of course, you have bad actors involved. You've got Antifa. They can call them up, call them off the bench, right? And now we have chaos. So then what happens? Well, we have martial law. And then who takes over while the whole thing is being sorted out? It is going to be the military, right? The military takes over. So if you have a contested election and officially Biden is not president, right? He is not president because he is in the sort of the storm of this chaos. Trump is not president. So who does that leave? Mike Johnson.
Yeah, or kind of like Mike Johnson and Nikki Haley, vice president type shit.
It's just Mike Johnson.
Just right? Mike Johnson.
Because he's
been anointed. He's been anointed to be the super Zog right now.
He's been doing everything in his power to do that. Right? Everything. Like the first thing that came out of his mouth when he was speaker was, the first thing I'm going to do is draft legislation to help our dear friend Israel. And I think everybody would agree with me that it's long overdue. That's what he said, right? Those were the first words out of his mouth. So now you have Mike Johnson, who is officially next in line, because you can't use Harris, right? You can't use her because she's like in suspended animation with Biden.
Yeah, unless they really got some strange scripts written up on that.
No, I don't think
you
so.
never know.
I think Mike Johnson is beloved by the Democrats because they helped elect him. Mike Johnson does not become Speaker of the House without the Democrats. And there was this one other guy who was challenging. So if you go back in time, and look, I'll even show you. I want to talk about something else before we end the show. And I want to do a major pivot here in a minute, but I'll show you just exactly how this thing went down. Okay. So I want you to take a look at these pictures. And you tell me if there wasn't a plan in place for Mike Johnson. This is all before he runs for Speaker of the House, right? Oh, look, him and Jim Jordan. Look at that. Welcome to Israel. Who was running as Speaker of the House? Jim Jordan, right? And people knew that there was a really good chance Jim Jordan was not going to be elected. Why? Because the other side of the aisle didn't like him.
But the other side of the aisle is okay. They're okay with Mike Johnson because they got some of the key.
This guy, on the other hand,
you got some of the key Zog backing.
Absolutely. Like, what do you think is really going on here?
Jim Jordan was probably just a little bit too independent. I think he was actually talking about things like the deficits and the whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. So Mike Johnson, there was another guy, I forget his name. I think he was. So you had Steve Scalise, and then there was another guy. I forget his name. It might have been another guy from Louisiana, actually. And he dropped out at the last moment, right, and made way for Mike Johnson. It was kind of like, okay, step aside. Here comes Mikey Boy. So I think that this is like they have a lot of these plans. Mike Johnson could very well be the next president of the United States.
Wow. That's wild. But he fits the mold.
Totally. Mike Johnson will do anything. Right? He'll do anything. Let me see.
So they'll get rid of Trump because Trump's usefulness may have been, worn out, and he can be kind of a spokesperson for all the wrong things to do. And then somebody like Mike Johnson can really institute a Zionist police state.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. And he's got a totally woke side too, to him, right? He's like spoken out against white privilege. He's had this weird thing where he talks about his son, his black son, that does not have the same advantages of his white son, right? And when I first heard that, and his adopted black son, I thought to myself, well,
isn't that sweet? Yeah, isn't that sweet? But but what kind of what kind of message are you sending out there? Some kind of.
Well, I thought they were the same age, but this adopted black son is like in his 40s.
Really?
Yeah. Like, this is so weird. Like, Mike Johnson and his wife, they're newlyweds, and they adopt this kind of, I don't know, troubled black 14-year-old dude. Like, who does that? Like, hey, honey, we just got married. Why don't we adopt this young?
It's kind of the ultimate virtue signaling.
It's just strange. It's really strange. But that's why the left likes him. He virtue signals. Russ, I hate to do this, but I have to drop out and come back. take care of things for about 2 minutes, and make sure the chat is
okay. Why don't you go ahead and pull up while you're gone? Go ahead and we'll just quickly run the thing where Fauci is being questioned.
I can't do anything until I come back.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
All right. All right, let's take a look at some of the comments here. Trump 2024. Really? Yeah, I guess everybody's entitled to their opinion. Robert's hysterical. That's true. Bush was conscientious about doing the work, read all the briefing memos before any so, yeah, he was a little more competent than Biden, certainly. I'm supposed to be impressed.
Okay. Let's so let's talk about Fauci, but I want to leave enough time in the show to talk about the USS Liberty, because June 8th, which is tomorrow, is the anniversary of the sinking of the USS Liberty. So I feel like we owe it to the guys on that ship and what happened to pay a little attention to that event. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. So let's
historical detail.
Let's go into the Fauci thing.
So the kind of the outspoken gal from Georgia, just kind of give you a flavor of what happened in this hearing.
She kicked his ass all over the place.
He was really on the defensive. I mean, it just looks bad if you sat down and watched the whole thing, which I doubt if very many people will. But some of the highlights.
Trust me, this group is all over it. Like we've digested it and shit this thing out already. But let's play it. Here we go.
Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no answer.
Yes, it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a you don't know what you represent.
Oh,
But this, as director of the NIH, you did sign off on these so-called scientific experiments. And as a dog lover, I want to tell you this is disgusting and evil, what you signed off on, and these experiments that happened to beagles paid for by the American taxpayer. And I want you to know Americans don't pay their taxes for animals to be tortured like this. So the type of science that you are representing, Mr. Fauci, is abhorrent. You confess that you made up the COVID rules, including 6 feet social distancing and masking of children.
I never said I made anything up.
You admitted that you made it up. You made it up as you went.
I didn't say I made it up.
So are you saying this is fake news, Mr. Fauci?
I didn't say I made anything up.
What did you say?
I said that it is not based in science and it just appeared.
But this is science. And making up guidelines like 6 feet distancing and masking of children. Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor. You're Mr. Fauci in my few minutes. No, I don't need your answer. That man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked and he belongs in prison.
Don't suspend.
Here you are without your mask.
This is good.
And enjoy
Here
the
you
game.
are without your mask.
Next to people, not following the 6 feet of distancing,
Everybody caught that.
not wearing your mask, and everyone else was forced to stay home and stop enjoying life. And your science here, your science is displayed perfectly in this picture where children in school were put in plastic bubbles because of your science, your repulsive, evil science. And let's go back to your very own email. You said earlier you don't use email. Oh, you do. Right here. This is your own email where you said the typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus. I do not recommend that you wear a mask. This is your email. This is your own words. But yet children all over America were forced to wear masks. Healthy children forced to wear masks, muzzled in their schools. And then they were forced to learn from home because of your so-called science and your medical suggestions, while you and all your cronies get paid from Big Pharma. You know that what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
Look, he's almost in tears. He's about ready to cry. I mean, the thing is, this is really good. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we need to see a lot on a lot of different issues, and you don't see it very often. But she just raked him over the coals.
You know, a lot of people don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I like her.
Oh, I do too.
I like her because
she says what needs to be said. You know, she doesn't mince words.
And somebody asked her about Trump, and she says, "I don't worship Donald Trump, right? I worship God and Jesus Christ as my Lord. That's who I don't worship the president, right?" And I'm like, "Good for you, right? Good for you. Way to set yourself apart from, you know, being a fangirl, right?" And she was very adamant about that. And then she tore into the rest of the Republican Party. Like between her and Thomas Massey, that's about it, man. And sometimes Ron Johnson and a little Chip Roy, that's about it. But I like her. And I know she's a hot mess, but I still like her.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas Massey's outspoken as well, but, you know, he's a little more professional. I mean, this is not real professional behavior. It's kind of rabble-rousing. But, oh, my God, it's just a joy to see her really just nail him on some of this crap, the so-called science of putting people in bubbles, little kids, traumatizing little kids, just showing the evil intent of a lot of this stuff. This is not incompetence. This whole thing with Fauci is not incompetence. It's about evil and malice.
I agree. Totally. 100%. That Beagle experiment was carried out in Tunisia, by the way, but it was used with U.S. taxpayer money, right? So I think by carrying it out on foreign soil, they were able to kind of like get around some kind of a law or regulation or something. That's how fucking tricky they are.
Right.
Like
the same with Wuhan. The same with the labs in Wuhan, where they kind of have a role in it, have a hand in it.
Right.
And don't really, they get involved in it and money exchanges hand, and then they don't have any controls over what happens. But that whole Wuhan, that they released this thing on the world. I'm convinced of that. This wasn't some bat.
Well,
thing.
Here's what I think. I think what they're very good at is doing lots of different things simultaneously, so that you get kind of let off your track a little bit. Like you're kind of right, but you're not completely right. Right. So I think there was something in Wuhan, clearly. Right. There's clearly something going on there, but there are other things going on too. Right. Like there was David Wolf brought this to my attention a couple years ago. And you could actually buy, if you wanted to, you could buy mRNA online. You could go right online right now and buy it. And there were videos of people who were, for all intents and purposes, Chinese, and they were taking and spreading things on like banisters and elevator panels, right? So what does mRNA do? It creates spike proteins. So if they did not have whatever kind of effect that this thing that they created in that lab, right? They could supplement it by taking mRNA and literally, putting it in places where it would affect people. And so I think there's that, right? There's a lot of things that were going on. And then you have, the PCR tests, which they used, which were garbage, to test people oh, well, now you have COVID, right? No, you don't have COVID. You don't have anything. You just turned up the cycles, and it's just picking up like junk bacteria that they can't classify. So it must be COVID. And then they had those COVID tests where they ram that thing straight up into your nasal passage, broke the blood-brain barrier, and they had people who were looking at what was on the tips of those swabs, right? So you have this wide array of distributing this thing. And that's what we got. That's what we got. And then once they had the test turned up through the PCR, now you had people that tested for it, even though they didn't have it. So now they had their test results, and that's what they used to force this whole thing. And Terry Mullis, who created the PCR, specifically said it was never to be used for anything like what they were using. And Kerry Mullis called Tony Fauci out before he died. And Kerry Mullis died just months.
Yeah, I mean, he was speaking against him well before COVID. He knew what he was like.
Right? So this was all planned. They had the game plan. They knew what they were doing. And Mullen,
what he died? He died of some fast-growing cancer or some weird shit like that, right?
Yes. Yeah. So does it look like Fauci's tearing up right there?
I think he's under a little stress. I mean, he's used to people sucking up to him for a long time, and now it's kind of raining down on him. So he's probably not used to it. He kind of lives in a bubble, and to show up and have somebody like that, being railed on like that about beagles. And, I don't know that attacking him on beagle experimentation is really the way to go, but she sure got him on a lot of the other stuff.
I think it gets people, it
emotional.
Hits an emotional nerve. Yeah. Animals and kids.
Well, one of the things about COVID, I just kind of wanted to mention because I kind of came across this. I wish I could find this. What did I do with it? There's polls that kind of show that how the boomer generation in particular was kind of pro-vaccine. Some of the younger generation.
It was the boomers and the millennials. They were the ones that were pushing everything. I've talked about this.
And they had this they had this evil alliance between this Zog media, Zionist, Jewish controlled media that's pushing all this stuff on behalf of the corrupt pharma, total grifting. The bigger the grifting and the bigger the grift, the better. And I found this, all these networks that were supporting the COVID vax during this period, I found out what their audiences were. And you'd be surprised. Like even MTV, it's like the average age of the MTV audience is 50 years old. Did you know that?
It doesn't surprise me.
Fox News. I mean, it's not ideological particularly. It's just kind of cross ideologies and all these boomer cows, I'd call them. And I guess I'm that generation as well. We're supporting COVID, and that's what they consume, this trash media, these different networks that were selling this stuff. And I can remember it well. We all can. And I think it's important to identify that. I wish somebody would call that to account. Where did you get your marching orders from? And it's got to stem from money and corruption and grifting. That's what Fauci's all about. And they really had their ducks lined up with the media as well.
Of course. Even Tucker Carlson in the early days of COVID would have this physician on there. And he would talk about COVID and shots and the vaccine and, the social distancing. And the longer it went on, you could tell that Tucker was not buying the fairy tale. and he became more aggressive towards Tony Fauci. And eventually it was a range war. And that guy, I think his name was Dr. Mark something. I forget. He's an older dude, and he was gone. Tucker never had him on again. Do you know about this guy right here?
No.
Okay, that's Ivan Raiklin. And Ivan Raiklin claims to have all the dirt on the FBI and people like Fauci. Like, I've played the Ivan Raiklin video. I'm not going to play it now.
How did he get that seat behind him? How did he pull that off?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? And I don't know what the answer to that is. But he's back there, and he's trying to be an intimidating force on the shoulder of Fauci. The guy on his right is his buddy who's making faces.
I saw that.
Yeah, they're connected, those two guys.
So somebody on the Senate staff or one of the congressmen that's anti-Fauci arranged that as part of the.
That's what I think.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's
it's okay. I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
I want to talk about.
It's called Discordianism. I got a good article on Discordianism. Discordianism is a lot of prankery and things that kind of get attention that way, and it's very effective.
I'm into it.
It's really one of the few ways to really fight this stuff. I'm doing it through memes and everything else. I've really adapted memes. Memes isn't just for kids. It can even be for boomers like me.
So I was talking with my buddy Johnny today, and okay, so he goes to this local health food store, and there's a guy there that wears this Israeli soccer jersey all the time, right? And he says, man, he seems like a really nice guy, and you know, I somehow want to tell him I want to talk to him about what's going on over there, right? But he's always wearing this Israeli soccer jersey, and I don't know really how to break the ice, right? And talk, because I really like the dude, right? So I said, well, here's what you do, Johnny. This is Discordianism. All right. So this is my suggestion, Russ. Right. So you do this. You buy this jersey, which is a Palestinian soccer jersey, right? And then I
don't think they're playing soccer there anymore.
No, but this is symbolic, right?
Yeah.
So here, right, his initials are JC, right? So you put JC right here instead of Palestine, and then the number is 12, right? So, of course, JC, Jesus Christ, and 12, the disciples. So this is, I think, the icebreaker, right? This is what you do.
I doubt that works.
No, I know. But that to me is Discordianism, right? Because you're kind of mixing and matching the symbols. It's like, well, if you're a Palestinian, then you're Hamas, right? Or whatever. But no, if you put JC back here in the number 12, like, that'll fuck with people's heads.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed lately is the use of CGI to create these very funny satirical parodies that are just, I mean, I found one, we probably really couldn't put it on for people to watch because we'll probably be taken down if we do.
Yeah.
It's probably just going too far. But if you want to see it, go to my site, and look under an article called October 7th. It's called the October 7th. Oh, here's the Boomer Vision one. Okay, hang on. I'll send you this chart of the different networks. Okay, here it comes. There's your networks right there. That basically we're very much behind the COVID. You see it? The bottom, the older set.
Yeah. They know that
they're big consumers. They're big consumers of mainstream media like CNN and Fox News, MSNBC, TBS, Bravo, whatever that is. I don't even know what that is.
It's an arts and entertainment network.
What's TNT?
TNT is like Turner, the Turner Network. You know, they have the basketball games with Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal, right?
Well, those guys got involved in COVID heavy.
Of course they did. They all pushed it. They all pushed the shots.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you get out to write about here, right there, what are people interested in? They're interested in living, right? They don't want to die. So you're preying upon their fear of mortality, and especially for a lot of the boomers, they want to travel, they want to keep the party going, right? So a lot of that is also convenience. I'll take the shots, I'll get the card, I'll get to travel.
Yeah, but they shut everything down too,
right?
Not just shots. They put draconian controls. I mean, I'm having kind of a second round of being very pissed off about it, because here where I am now, the Czech Republic, they were really running hardcore lockdowns. If you're walking around on the street, even with a mask on, you know, I was approached a couple times by police, and they kind of went through the motions. And they had them dressing in black. I thought that was very strange during that period. And they ask you where you're going, and usually they have the ones I would run into spoke English. And I said, well, I'm getting a little exercise, and they actually were okay with that, because there's a kind of like a sub rule that if you're getting exercise, it's okay to go out. But they kind of recommended that I go to this park, so they wouldn't be kind of corralled in a certain place.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of
there seems to be some psychic backlash happening now with COVID. Like there's something in the culture now where people are getting side-eyed, and they're kind of pissed. People are getting kind of pissed. And it also is not just pissed about what happened, but I also feel like the influencers that were pushing the damn thing, right now, they're kind of under the crosshairs, because a lot of them are starting to walk their shit back. It's like, oh no, you don't get to do that. You know, just because your last name is Cuomo, you don't get to do that. You were pushing this shit hard. And now all of a sudden, I couldn't enforce that law anyway. Right?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah, I think what it was that after they kind of gave everybody the freedom, people sort of go, oh, I appreciate that. You're such a nice people to finally let me go into restaurants again. I couldn't go into restaurants without a vaccine certificate for a while. So I life got back to normal, and people kind of go, okay, well, that's over with, and just move on with life. But now, like you say, it's like a second wave of rethinking this, because now you've got this bird flu shit going on, and you got this funny feeling that the same general group and these same networks are going to be running a slightly different version of the same crap.
Right. And here we go. So we have election time, right? And what happened during 2020? Oh, you don't have to go to the polls. We'll just take your ballot for you. Right. It was like, oh, good. I don't have to go out. I don't have to be exposed to other people. Yeah. Well, can I help you? Can I help you vote?
What a grifting operation that was.
I don't know who to vote for. Oh, don't worry. I'll help you. Right. And so we know how that went. The thing with bird flu, apparently you don't even have to test positive for it. Oh, isn't that interesting? All they have to do is declare some kind of emergency, and doesn't matter whether you have it or not, right? It's just a blanket emergency.
Jeez. Yeah, that looks like a good one.
And then we've got the potential migrant crisis coming up, right? Like, so in 2020, we had the summer of Floyd. What's going to be the point of tension? in this country as we run up to the election, I think it's probably going to be the migrant thing. That's what I think. So either their benefits run out or something happens, and we've got trouble on the streets of America.
Well, and it could be something on a geopolitical front, because I don't think Russia is just going to stand by and allow their cities to be hit with Ukrainian weapons supplied by the United States. I just don't see that as an option that they're going to accept. And so that's realpolitik. And if you're an American and that concerns you, if you're a European living in Europe, it concerns you. The Czech Republic held a meeting with all the big mucky mucks of NATO in Prague. I'm sure the Russians are taking notice of that. So I don't feel very comfortable about that. And I think that the Russians could put on some pretty good displays. And they may do it in an area where they have, the big global South support, which is the fight against Israel, and using their heavy-duty long-range missiles against aircraft carriers. They could probably get away with that, right? In terms of world opinion.
Yeah.
The big bad U.S. aircraft carriers, sink one of those with a couple thousand sailors, and how's the United States going to?
I just don't think, like, for instance, if you go to Russia and you speak out against Israel or you speak out against Zionism, that is a punishable offense in Russia, right? Like, Putin has made it very clear that is inviolate. Like, you cannot go there in public Russian discourse.
Right, but he's willing to provide weapons to really nasty weapons to the Houthis, not to strike Israel necessarily, but to strike the United States.
That's, I think, a point of distinction, and I think that's important. Yeah,
yeah. You got problems in the United States. You bring anybody that's bringing weapons into the Ukraine to use on Russia. That's a very serious area. Yeah. That needs a lot of attention, and it's a real pressure point that Russia's not going to back down on. And I'm really worried about that.
Well, I think Israel's in trouble, and I've talked about this from the astrological side, and I'll probably talk about it again on Sunday night. But you got to watch out for the second week of July in Israel, because I think things are going to get very hot there in the second week of July. But that's for
the move against Hezbollah may happen next week, mid-month. They're talking about. There's apparently the Lebanese have been warned by British channels that an attack is coming.
Oh, good old British.
And Nasrallah just said, "Bring it on." And meanwhile, did you see the big fires that they started in northern Israel?
Yep.
I have a post on that. If you're not, if you want to kind of follow events there.
Yeah, we need to talk about the USS Liberty before the show goes dark, though, because tomorrow is the anniversary of the sinking of the USS Liberty, and some people may know about it. They may not know a lot about it, but Russ, I think your knowledge on this is pretty good, right?
Yeah, I know the story. Yeah.
You want to break it down for people? Let me see if I can get a visual.
It's been kind of buried, but essentially what happened is that a heavily decorated ship, the USS Liberty, in 1967, was off in the Mediterranean, observing things, kind of looking for different head fakes and different movements and whatnot, and the emerging war between Egypt and Israel.
Right. This is during the 6-Day War.
Now, if you go back and you look, anybody's been following us, we at one time covered the sneak attack that the Israelis used on Egypt. Kind of swung way out in the Mediterranean and kind of came back from the west and surprised the Egyptian Air Force on the ground and shattered them. Well, that's what the USS Liberty was monitoring. And so I think there's a two-pronged reason for it. Is maybe to kind of make sure the USS Liberty didn't catch their feint movement coming in, somehow slip it to the Egyptians, but I don't think it was going to happen. Or to do a false flag, because it wouldn't make sense for Egypt to go out there and possibly hit that Liberty if they thought that they were helping the Israelis in their maneuver. You follow? So there's a backstory there that I think a lot of people don't realize. But the bottom line is the Israelis sent a bunch of, I think, unmarked planes out there and sunk the ship or heavily damaged it and killed, I don't know, 30 or 40 sailors.
Well, they started with these, they were flying the French Mirage jets, and they came in and they fired missiles on the USS Liberty. And then they had these gunboats that came along and fired torpedoes.
Yeah, it was a heavy assault. It wasn't just an accidental one plane came in and dropped a bomb. It was like a full assault on the USS Liberty, and the USS Liberty had a flag up. And so you got to ask the Israelis, why did you do this? Clearly it was not an Egyptian ship. And you weren't even at war with Egypt at that moment. The war was breaking out. So it was just kind of a cowardly sneak attack. There's just more stupid behavior.
So what's interesting about this is that, first of all, you have Johnson as president. And, he's just lame. I mean, he's really a lame duck, right? By the following year, he's out. He's out. Election year cycle, he's done. He also was very instrumental in essentially moving lots of quote unquote people who were religiously persecuted in Russia from Russia to the United States. They happened to be Jewish. Never did he move any Russian Christians, by the way. But, so he had a pipeline going.
Then a lot of the people they brought in were mafia types.
Right. So this is
Brighton Beach Mafia, Jewish Mafia.
Right. So this is like Johnson's kind of relationship with the superstructure. And then there's this denial. Well, it's an accident, and we didn't know, and like, where have we heard that before? We'll just go back over the last couple months, right?
Yeah, it's just Pat. It's Pat behavior.
We'll have an investigation. So what happens because of this is really the birth of AIPAC. AIPAC had another name prior to it being AIPAC. And what they realized was that in order for them to combat this situation in any situations moving forward, that they would have to have a much more powerful lobby and a much more powerful presence. So this actually instigated the growth and acceleration of AIPAC.
Yeah, they need more cover. But I think AIPAC really fundamentally is just about a takeover. Maybe this is a catalyst, but it's just about a takeover of the government.
Yeah. So there it is, June 8th, 1967. 34 Americans killed, 174 injured.
Wow.
And
a lot of casualties.
A lot of casualties. And nothing. No, what, some kind of apology maybe?
It kind of makes you wonder if there might be a similar type of false flag again, because they got to do something to stir the United States up to get involved in their unjust wars.
Well, the false flag is always a. Well, I mean, what happened on October 7th?
Yeah, they basically infiltrated a few Hamas units and asking people to believe that flying lawnmowers is the flying lawnmowers are flying around for 7 hours.
Right.
Pickup trucks for 7 hours.
Right.
They just so happened to move. They so happened to move the Nova event right next to the border from another location. And just
that I wasn't aware of. They did that. They moved that event.
Yeah, right at the last minute. Total Mossad operation. They let him in. You know, if anybody has any doubt, I have several articles. In fact, let me refer you to what I was trying to find you, because we can't put this up. We're running out of time, and I can't put this up because they'll take it down. I got to be careful. But today, parodies can be the brutal truth. Parallel universe Trump on the real October 7th. And somebody made a Discordian.
Oh, I saw that.
CGI. I mean, it's just perfect.
Yeah.
Trump's referring to flying lawnmowers over Israel.
Right. Well, they had a false flag to kick it all off. And clearly, most of the facts they're refutable, right? Like even some of the footage that they used was from a different event. Like you have one piece of evidence in a chain link of evidence, and you're pulling from something that happened in Egypt years before. Like your case is done. You can't really believe that case from that moment forward. Right. It's like, really? That's what you're doing? You're using that? No, you got to come up with something better than that.
If you really want to know about October 7th, there's a new documentary called October 7th Inside Job. I have the posting on there. I also have it under my videos. Excellent. Very, very, very well done. Hits the key point. Even goes with a lot of Israeli spokesmen within Israel. They're calling bullshit on this whole thing.
Right.
But the question is now, if they go after Hezbollah, at the moment, it doesn't look like the United States would want to get engaged with that one, right? It just doesn't. It's not likely the United States is going to be on board. In fact, the administration warned Israel against it, said, don't do it. You're making a mistake. So how would they get the United States involved in a war with Hezbollah?
The first thought that comes to mind is a bomb on an airplane. That's the first thought that comes to mind.
Yeah, some kind of sabotage or some kind of a big
right. And then, somebody claims credit for it, right?
Or cyber attack that just kind of takes down a lot of utilities, takes a lot of the infrastructure of the United States down. I wouldn't put that past.
That could be. That could play part of it. I just feel like when you have these visceral events, people become emotionally invested, right? Like taking down the grid or whatever. Yeah, you would get angry, but I don't know. It feels to me like you need something visceral to push the emotional narrative. But it could happen, right? It could happen. And next thing you know, they're getting ready to draft people and send them off to war, which is, quite
it was hard hitting, and you can get this compliant media, including some of the stuff that I just showed you with these boomer cows, what they watch, and then run the propaganda there and convince the world that it's some kind of Hezbollah, Iran-related terror attack. Then you got your all-out war.
So,
and I almost kind of think there's some kind of an in-game prophecy going on here. There's a lot of messianic stuff, and I didn't used to take messianic stuff seriously.
Yeah,
have you looked into that at all?
Absolutely. What do you think, Mike Johnson? What do you think Mike Johnson's about?
Right. Yeah, I think the people running the Israelis right now are almost really literally gunning for this messianic era, apocalyptic. Right. I think that's why they're so crazy. So it wouldn't put them past them to do something like this and take down the Amalek. I mean, that's who they're after. It's basically to destroy the Amalek, their perceived enemies.
Right.
And that would be the way to do it. So how else are they going to get the United States involved in a war with Iran and Hezbollah? And
I think the mechanisms of media have changed drastically since COVID. I don't think people watch as much mainstream media as they used to. And now they have to figure out how they can get into the algorithm and get into the brains of people through so-called alternative media, right? Whether it's like the Young Turks or whatever, on the other side. But that's what I think that they have to figure out, because there's been such a distrust in a lot of ways of the mainstream media and fake news that they have to somehow create an alternative authority that people can buy into and trust. Like Ben Shapiro would be a good example. That's what they would invest in. They would invest in Ben Shapiro more than they would Fox News.
Yeah, and he would sell the idea that Hezbollah and Iran committed whatever atrocity they have in mind, false flag atrocity.
Right.
Or staged.
Because I think it's shifted that far now.
But I think they got to do something pretty heavy. I don't think it can be lightweight stuff. I mean, taking down a plane, I think it's going to be more than that. That's kind of my feeling.
Depends who's on the plane.
Yeah.
So, aside from that,
I'm not letting them know my travel plans. I'll tell you that.
aside from that, I do think that ultimately all of this will backfire. I am nearly 100% convinced by this.
Well, October 7th is kind of backfiring. I mean, if you really look at it honestly.
Absolutely.
But it depends on what the objective is. If the objective is really to protect and defend Israel, it's been a failure. But if your objective is to create some kind of apocalyptic messianic event, then that's a different story. And I don't know that that's not the objective.
It's a good point.
Just want it out there for people to consider.
I still think it'll backfire. And I just think that we're in this time now where the best laid plans just won't work. They're just, and they may work for a brief period of time, but they just won't be supported. And I have my own reasons for that. They have very little to do with so-called.
Well, how about just guys dying for Israel is not going to go over real well. That's one.
No, I don't think anybody.
Guys coming back in body bags that's not going to be popular.
Right.
But do they even care? Because the idea is to bring the whole country down. All the things we've been discussing all evening, Mexico, these different.
Well, to your point, right? I think Israel is sacrificable. Like, I think that they would sacrifice Israel for some kind of greater plan. That's what I think.
It's got to be messianic. It's got to be their weird religious nonsense.
Yeah.
End times and stuff. And the Zionists, the evangelical Zionists are largely into the same nonsense.
Yeah, but their messiahs are different, right? Like they have. It's a weird thing because they support one another, but they have dueling messiahs. It's just weird.
Dueling prophecies, sort of.
Yeah, it's just really weird, right? It's like it's the weirdest, most codependent relationship in modern times. Where ultimately the end game of each party is decidedly different, but they'll support each other until that time comes. It's just weird. Just really weird. No. Okay, Russ, you got anything else you want to bring to the table before we sign off?
That's good. That's good. Call it a night.
All right, my man. So we'll see you back in a month, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about by then. In the meantime, if you want to keep up with Russ and his stellar work, nose to the grindstone approach, pick up some good memes that we cannot play here, go to winterwatch.net. Follow him over on Twitter at New Nationalist. I retweet his content as often as I can. And that's the best way to support him and what he's doing. So, Russ, you take good care. Okay, my friend?
All right, man. Thanks. See ya.
All right. Bye for now. There he was, the great Russ Winter, another one in the books. And I wanted to just revisit the Mexico thing. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the populace of Mexico. Because if Claudia Sheinbaum has a deal with the cartels, that's her muscle, right? That's her muscle. So the people of Mexico may have to deal with that. And that's not a very pleasant, it's not a very pleasant thought about the repercussions of this person and their candidacy and their election. You know, what's really interesting is I've been kind of digging around, and Mexico has a storied past with socialism and communism. And in 1937, Leon Trotsky went to Mexico because he was on the run from Joseph Stalin. And Trotskyism and Stalinism were different. They were different approaches to communism, right? And Stalin also thought that Trotsky was a bit of a threat. So Trotsky went to Mexico in 1937. Of course, he stays with Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. And there are other people that follow him to Mexico during that time. But even prior to that, there was a migration of people from Lithuania and Russia who had immigrated to Mexico. And that's where Claudia Sheinbaum's grandparents arrive on the scene. And they're already communists by the time they get there. They're already communists. And they are kind of key figures in the participation of the first Communist Party in Mexico. And you'll be very surprised by who the person is that set up the first Communist Party in Mexico. I'm going to talk about it on Sunday night. And this person will be put under the astrological microscope. And it is a very interesting story that has many layers, many layers. So we'll get into that on Sunday night. We'll look at Claudia Sheinbaum's chart, even though I don't have a birth time. We'll try to rectify it. Somebody was asking about Millet, and I've already looked at his chart once. I'll look at it again. Personally, I have a bias against him. I don't think he is who he says he is, or so I'll go into it again, try to be as neutral as I can, but we'll take a look at his. I'm much more interested in Claudia Sheinbaum's chart, so we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at Mexico's chart because it has a chart, just like every single country in the world, and we'll throw hers up there against Mexico's and see where she fits in the equation. And we'll see if this facilitates an awakening of our friends south of the border. And if that's so, what would be the cost or the price of that awakening? Stay tuned. Anyway, thank you for being here, Chataria. Thank you for being here. Everybody that supported the show, thank you for being here. If you have purchased a cup of coffee, thank you for doing that. I am grateful for everyone that has supported the show in every way that you can. I cannot do this show without you. Truly, I mean that from a personal standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, and even whatever help you're able to provide for the support of the show. You can go to Locals and also support the show. We did our first live last week. I'll be posting some more over on Locals over the weekend. And I guess I got an event tomorrow on Locals. How about that? We're doing a summer sizzle tomorrow on Locals. So all you Locals people, it's happening, right? So we got a live event, summer sizzle, summer astrological sizzle. We'll be looking at the next 3 months astrologically, and you'll get that only over on Locals. All right. God bless y'all. Have a great day. Stay cool out there. Bye for now.